All right, more drama in our nation's capital at DCA. This time it's not a mid-air collision, but there was a collision on the ground. This is an incident that's near and dear to my heart. Let's take a look, and I'm going to give you my backstory as we get going.
22, continue taxi on Kilo, cross runway 15, for the whole bay of runway 19. Make sure you guys are ready to go by the top of the hour. Mark the tower to the side. We'll see you later. We'll see you later.
Okay, the incident that we're going to describe is going to take place at the approach end of runway 19 at DCA. It's kind of a cramped little area. Many times on the chart that we look at as pilots, it will call that a hot spot, and it'll be circled in red. And it just is kind of a warning to the pilots that it's a little tight in that area. Be careful, be on the lookout. I'm not sure that this is a hot spot at DCA, but it is a confined space, and we're going to have an issue here in a minute.
Lucy 5490 cross, 315 at 0 after you cross, pull the whole bay of runway 19.
Steeeve 37, level 36.
On 5 is here, pulling the whole bay, and Mark after 190.
Okay, so can you see it all coming together now? All right, you got Delta coming in. Delta's going to park and get ready to take off. You got a little RJ, Embraer 175, already parked in that little spot, and here comes the CRJ 900.
5490, traffic 4 out, runway 19, line up the way. November 975 Mike, staying on watch tower, runway 19 for the land at the park.
Okay, so Tower now tells the CRJ 900 to go in line up and wait on the runway, which means you're next for takeoff. So this CRJ 900 is going to attempt to squeeze in between the Airbus and that little Embraer 175. Now, here's a couple of extenuating circumstances in an incident like this. From the cockpit, I cannot see the wingtips of my airplane. I'm not sure about these smaller jets, but my guess is they can't. It's not something that you can simulate in the simulator. The simulator doesn't have wings. So it's something that you get a feel for over time. How wide do you think you are when you're going through a space? Most of the time, it's no big deal because there's nobody anywhere near you. But if you're trying to thread the needle like this, and again, ground, put them in front of everybody else, that's kind of it's a gotcha. It's a little trap. It's a threat that you have to capture. And I'm sure that the pilots talked to each other about it and said, yeah, I feel okay with it. But it turns out
19 clear to land, 975 Mike. Blue Street 5129, right turn, Foxtrot, right turn, Juliet, grab 17, great day. Right turn, Foxtrot, right turn, Juliet, over the ground.
Full about 200 for 5,000.
now listen, here it comes.
Blue Street 5490, so we hit the aircraft next door.
Okay, so these guys are calling the tower and they're going, I think we hit the aircraft next to us. Not really sure. Now, why are they not really sure? Well, they might have heard something, they might have felt something, but they're taxiing. Many times these concrete taxiways are just like you taxiing down or driving down a road. There's little potholes, there's little bumps, there's little cracks in the pavement, and you're not sure, did we just hit a bump just now? Did we go over something on the surface? Or did we actually hit another airplane? It's not a sensation that most pilots have felt many times in their career, but these guys strike the wing of the airplane that they just passed, and now they're asking for clarification from the tower. I'll tell you my story in a minute.
5490, say that last part, Blue? We should be fine at the 175 and 419. Ground turn right heading 250, maintain 3000.
All right, we're going around heading 250 up to 3,000. Recover for 271.
Blue Street 5490, just if you can, just exit the runway 19 and the era behind the Delta.
So Tower doesn't have time to clarify all of this. Basically, they're still running an airport here, and they've got people coming in, they got people going out. You see, he had to talk to the aircraft that just departed off the runway before he could get back to this guy. Now he's saying to him, just here's what I need you to do. Go on the runway and exit on Sierra. Once you exit there, I'll have a few minutes to do a little preliminary investigation to find out what I think happened. The Airbus is going to chime in here in a minute.
Okay, 19 is Sierra behind the Delta, Blue Street 5490. So Blue Street 5490, you think you hit the Embraer or the Airbus? It might have been the Embraer. We just heard a loud, like a boom, right as we just like a sunk before the runway at 5490.
Okay, here comes the Airbus.
Delta 1391, were you affected by the CRJ? Negative.
Nope, he says.
But there is, we can see a piece of a winglet on the ground behind the right wing of the Embraer.
Okay, so now it's confirmed. The Airbus says we weren't affected by it. He didn't hit us, but now we're looking out the window and we can see some FOD on the ground, right? Foreign object debris on the ground that clearly came from the one wingtip striking the other wingtip. These guys are not going to make their way back off the runway. And this is the worst feeling in the world for a pilot. All right, there's that moment of, I think we just kind of screwed up type of feeling. Now, nobody was hurt here. This is just something that can be fixed. That's the good news about something like this. But there's that sinking feeling of, oh man, my day, my week, my month just got real long. I had an incident, two incidents like this back in the past. Remember, I've been flying for 40 years now. So back in the Navy, we were taxiing an airplane. It was a ramp that was under construction. So they had moved all the airplanes kind of in to do some construction over here. And the airplanes were tighter than they were ever had been before. I was being marshaled in by a ramp marshaller, and he turned me to park into my parking spot. The tail end of my airplane pivoted out and struck the tail end of another airplane. I didn't even feel it. Somebody came up afterwards and said, hey, I think we hit the airplane behind us. And then you could see some of that foreign object debris laying there on the ground. And sure enough, you know, it was a long month. These guys, it's the same thing. I had something similar like this happen in the airlines. We were taxiing out on a bright morning. The sun was just kind of coming up over the horizon. There was an airplane parked waiting for departure on an intersection for a runway. We were cleared to taxi beyond them. It didn't seem like we were all that close to the other airplane. They ended up being 50 feet short of where they were supposed to park. That's not their fault because they're stationary. And here's a little maritime law for you. A ship at sea, a ship that's moving, a ship at sea, if it ever strikes a ship at rest, it's always the ship at sea's fault. So since we were moving, our wingtip, and we had those winglets at the end of the wing, it scraped the underneath side of this 737, caused a couple $1 million worth of damage, right? So here's what happens to the pilots in a situation like this. The crew of the CRJ 900 is going to get some time off. So is the crew of the Embraer Air 175. Why? They were just sitting there. Well, they have to do an investigation. These guys are going to taxi back to the terminal. The passengers are going to be reaccommodated. And they're going to have to go do a urinalysis. Then they're going to fill out a bunch of forms. Then they're going to be contacted by the union. Then they're going to be assigned an attorney. And it may be days, it may be weeks, it may be a month or more before this whole thing gets resolved. It depends on the dollar value of the damage here. Now, clearly nobody was hurt, so that lowers the issue, but it comes down to the dollar value. Could this be the sort of thing where they don't ever have a hearing? Yeah, it could be. If it's a minimal amount of damage, there's probably just going to be, they get a talking to, they get a little bit of a lecture, maybe they get a little bit of additional training. But again, in the simulator, how do you simulate a wingtip strike? You can't, right? So, but in my case, being over $2 million of damage, I went through that pink and punk thing where I talked about on a recent video, where pink is procedural intentional noncompliance, right? If I said, forget it, I don't care about the rules, I'm going to do what I want. That's intentional noncompliance. That's the worst offense you can do. Procedural unintentional noncompliance is what happened here. They didn't intend to hit the other airplane. They thought they had clearance. They didn't. There was an incident. Now they're either going to get a letter, or they're going to get some additional training, or they're going to get both. And so it could take a while. I'd be interested for you guys that have been through something like this, or maybe some of you guys that work for the FAA or retired from the FAA, if you know what the criteria is for a hearing. Is it $1 million? Is it $500,000? I don't know what the criteria is exactly, but there's some dollar figure that goes with that. No doubt these guys are going to have a very long day, though.
Roger that. And Brickyard 45, so I was going to verify, it appears that your winglet.
Okay, so the tower calls out to Brickyard 4522. Aren't you shocked? You haven't heard from these guys yet. They're sitting there. Everybody's talking about them. They got their airplane run into, and they haven't said a word yet. They haven't said boo. Here's all they say in the whole thing. I can't understand what they said. It was probably something along the lines of, yeah, I think we got run into. Okay, yeah, very odd.
And Tower Delta 1391, just a heads up, we are ready when able. 1391, roger that. Just on standby.
So Delta now is reading the tea leaves, and they're like, "Hey, can we get out of here?" Like, nope. Here's what's going to happen. They have to shut down the runway. Why? Because there's foreign object damage and debris here, and they have to go out. And one of the ops trucks is going to come out, see how much did this other airplane shed parts on the runway? They're going to have to go do a whole runway scan to make sure that there's not stuff laying all around. They're going to shut down runway 19. Delta is going to take a little while for them to get off the ground.
Double 1391, just be advised, we're going to start the parking for a while, find out where the pod is located. So take a small delay.
So you're getting educated as a channel, right? FOD is foreign object debris, and that's exactly what the tower now is telling them. They're going to have to wait for that inspection.
1391.
Tower 490, I can see the piece of FOD is directly behind the 175 and the north end of the whole base of 1.
Here's one of the cool things about aviation. The offender, the guy who just bumped into the other jet, he's helping out. He's saying, hey, I can see a bunch of this stuff on the ground from our vantage point here. And, they'll be the first guys to say, hey, I'm really sorry, that this happened. That's one of the nice things about the aviation culture is the ownership part of it. Nobody is trying to, no pun intended, sweep this stuff away or under the carpet. Everybody's going to own up to it. One of the things that they do after they do the urinalysis and they get some time off the schedule is they're going to fill out a form in the first 24 hours that protects them from immunity, and it describes in detail what happened. Now, if they ever did make it to a hearing, they would show up with that piece of paper. The investigators, in this case would be the FAA, would investigate this. The FAA would show up with all the diagrams and how far they were from this and how close they were to that and where the Airbus was and and they'd put all that together, and the attorneys would show up, they would compare all that. And then a bigger part of it is, what's the demeanor of the crew, the offending, the ship that was at sea, the one that was moving? Are they belligerent? Are they cooperative? Are they saying, hey, it wasn't my fault? Or are they owning up to it? That's a big part of this ingredient, and most pilots are going to own up to it almost immediately, like these guys do.
490, roger that. Really, they want to get out the airport management to get out there and inspect and check. So the reason I'm not getting on the other side there is because the RJ and the Embraer seem to have maybe clipped wings over there, and there's a winglet in the block, so we're stopping traffic over there. I'll bring you over there when I can. They're going to bring off over there. Are you able to runway 15 by any chance? Because I don't want to hold you up if you're able to depart off 15.
So there's just an explanation now from ground why they're not having any departures right now. They got to clean up the mess down at the runway, and they're going to ask that Airbus if he wants to go on another runway. He's got to run the numbers to do that, but yeah, he's going to go on that other runway.
We'll run the numbers and I'll let you know and understand everything that's happening. But thank you, Southwest 2925.
345, don't you like, hold this and manage this, stand by.
Okay, there it is. It ends up that that Delta 1391, that Airbus there, about 20 minutes later, they got airborne on a different runway 15. The other two regional jets, they had to return back to the terminal. Everybody got deplaned and reaccommodated, and the crews get pulled out to go through that procedure that I described to you just a few minutes ago. It ends up being a very long day, a very long week, but it's very thorough and it's designed to keep things safe. So again, once again, lots of drama at DCA. I bet you DCA is ready for the drama to stop. But a dramatic event up there that didn't really hit the news as big as some others have recently, but I thought you would want to know. So now you know. I'm Captain Steeve. Fly safe. Hey, don't go yet. Do me a favor. Like and subscribe to this video, and a super big shout out to our friends at VASAviation for creating the video that we reacted to today. Thanks, guys.